the Marley Bird YouTube channel. In this video, I get to show you some brand new yarn on the market by Red Heart. It is new to their Super Saver line and it's called Super Saver Fair Isle. This is one of those yarns that has been specially dyed, so when you use basic stitches, the yarn color itself is going to land in such a way that it resembles Fair Isle without having to do all the work of Fair Isle. This is a wonderful yarn just to play around with, both for experienced knitters and beginner knitters. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this very easy Fair Isle knit scarf. It's a basic stockinette stitch scarf with a garter edge, so that way it doesn't roll. And we will let the yarn do all of the work for us as far as the color changes. We won't worry anything about that. This is a free pattern available over on redheart.com, and a link to the yarn itself is available in the video description below with the free pattern. While you're down there, go ahead and smash that like button, as my kids say, so that way I know you enjoyed this video. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to make this super simple scarf using Super Saver Fair Isle. Now you can use any yarn you want to make this particular scarf, but we're going to use the Fair Isle so that way the colors kind of mess around and have some fun with it. This is perfect for beginners, so grab your needles, your pattern, and some yarn, and let's jump in. If you're following along with the pattern, I want you to see what materials you need. Of course, you need the free pattern. You're also going to need 2 balls of the Super Saver Fair Isle. You need a pair of size 8 or 5mm knitting needles, good pair of scissors, a wonderful bent tip tapestry needle. And to add fringe, it's recommended to have a crochet hook. It makes it a little bit easier. This is a size I or a 5.5mm crochet hook. And one of the things that is not listed on here are stitch markers. Now you don't need stitch markers, but I'm going to show you how having stitch markers could really help you stay on track with what you need to do in your pattern. So I'm going to use stitch markers today in this video. Let's jump in. I am using Red Heart's Fair Isle and Candy Fair Isle, and we are going to start off with a Longtail cast on. This is a really basic cast on, and I think it's perfect when we're jumping into the garter stitch edge, which we're going to do here at the start. For a Longtail cast on, you want to make sure you have a tail that's long enough for the number of stitches you're going to put on. We're going to put on 28 stitches. So one way you can accommodate your tail is take your tail and wrap it around your knitting needle a total of 28 times. Once you have that total of 28 times, that gives you an idea of how long your tail needs to be. I still give myself a little bit extra room, and it's at this point that I will put my slip knot. To do a slip knot, you take the tail of your yarn and place it in the palm of your hand. Take your working yarn, wrap it around your forefinger and your middle finger. When you come back up, cross over. Now you will turn your hand over, go underneath this front loop, and grab the back loop and pull it off. You've now created a slip knot. We will put that slip knot directly onto our knitting needle. Now we want to do the Longtail cast on. When we do the Longtail cast on, we want to make sure we don't let this slip knot fall off our needle. So we're going to put our finger on it and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. We are going to take our tail and we are going to go ahead and grab the tail and scoop your thumb around just like so. Okay? Now I want you to stick your forefinger out. Can you see how that working yarn is laying there on the forefinger? That's what we want. So what we have here, if I were to let go, is I have my tail wrapped around my thumb and my working yarn wrapped around my forefinger. I'm going to pick this back up and hold this slip knot so it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to grab the outside portion of those 2 lengths of yarn. When I get back in this position, I am in a slingshot position and I'm ready to do the Longtail cast on. You take the tip of your needle, start down here at the bottom of your thumb, go up, swivel, go down, and I have a little window that I've created right there, and I'm just going to swivel my needle right through and then let it fall off my thumb and pull. Up, down, through the window, off. in, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. I count my slip knot as a stitch, and I can count all of my stitches after that. I want to make sure I get 28 stitches. Once you get 28 stitches on your needle, it will look something like this. You have a nice edge right here of all of the stitches you've created, which is perfect. Now you will take this needle and place it in your left hand. And we no longer need our tail, so we're just going to ignore our tail, and we're going to only use our working yarn. Now, we want to go ahead and knit a total of 8 rows. So to knit, we will take our right hand needle, and going from left to right, we will go into that stitch, take our yarn, go around our needle, come out that same stitch, and then off the needle. In, around, out, off. Sound familiar? In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. Some of you might hold your yarn in the other hand, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like. It's the same motion. I just have the yarn in the opposite hand. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. You will do this all the way to the end of the row and for the next 7 rows after this. Once you've completed a total of 8 rows of knitting, join me back here. We're going to jump into the actual pattern sequence for this scarf. Once you've completed 8 rows of garter stitch, you will turn your work, and this is where we will repeat our pattern stitch. This first row is just knitting, which is what we've been doing all along. So we'll go ahead and knit this very first row. Once you've knit that row, you will turn your work, and we have to do something different on the wrong side row because we want stockinette in the body of our scarf. So we will go ahead, we will knit the first 4 stitches, and what this will do is keep these first 4 stitches in garter stitch. This is where I highly suggest using a stitch marker because I find it really helpful to be able to delineate where those 4 stitches are here at the start and then where the 4 stitches are going to be at the end of this row. So I'm going to grab a stitch marker that I've actually made, and I can show you how to make these stitch markers right here on the channel. I'll put a link right up there in that little I button. You will take your stitch marker and just place it on your right hand needle. That's all you do. All that's doing is it's a big kind of sign for me to say, hey, look, remember, we're doing something different between this stitch marker and the next. Now what I want to do is I want to purl the next 20 stitches. So I want to make sure I bring my yarn between my needles so it's up front here. And I will go into the stitch from right to left with the right hand needle coming in front. Take my working yarn and wrap it around my needle just like that. I'm going to show you how to do that one more time. We want to go around the needle over the top towards the bottom. Once you've done that, you go back out that stitch and off. Then you repeat. Around, out, off. In, around, out, off. You want to make sure you do not go around your stitch like that. That puts your stitches on your needle backwards, which is not incorrect. It just makes it so that you have to knit differently also. So if you're just learning and this is how you knit, go around your needle just like that to purl. In, around, and out. And you will purl 20 stitches, or you can think of it as you're purling to the last 4 stitches of the row. Now, some of you are continental purlers, so I'm going to show you how to do that. I will go into the stitch just like before, go around my needle and out. In, around, out. In, around, out. When I get to the last 4 stitches, I will place a second stitch marker, because then the last 4 stitches, I want to knit those. I don't want to purl them because I want those to be garter stitch. Oh, I just dropped that last stitch. So what I will do is I will take another stitch marker, place it directly onto my right hand needle, just ignore it, put my yarn to the back, and knit these last 4 stitches. Now I will go on and repeating these 2 rows, repeating row 9 and row 10. I will knit every time I am on my right side and then purl in between my stitch markers when I'm on my wrong side. When I turn my work, I will just ignore my stitch markers on this row because they don't really make a difference over here because I'm knitting all the way across. It's when I get to my wrong side when I have to purl or knit the first 4, purl all of these, and knit the last 4 that my stitch markers are going to be a big clue to me to say, hey, you got to do something different. To work with stitch markers, because some of you may have never worked with them before, it's really easy. Don't overthink it. You are simply going to knit to where the stitch marker is, and then you just slip the marker over. So there's where my stitch marker is. I'm just going to slip it over to the other needle, ignore it, and carry on. As you're working along on this project, you'll begin to notice where the yarn itself is starting to make that Fair Isle look that the yarn is known for, is named after. And it is really just done with the way the yarn is dyed. It just kind of gives a blurry Fair Isle look. Just a lot of fun. You'll go ahead and continue on working in this method, working between row 9 and 10, the right side and the wrong side, until your entire scarf measures 71 inches from the cast on edge. At that point, you will knit 8 more rows, so that way it matches this edge, and then bind off. Because I don't want to make a whole scarf right here on the video, I will show you how to bind off, and I'm just going to use my little sample right here, so that way you know what to do when you get to that point. When it's time for you to bind off stitches, it's really super easy. Let me show you how to bind off. When we bind off, we want to go ahead and knit the first 2 stitches. Once you've knit those 2 stitches, we want this stitch to jump over this one and then off the needle. So what I like to do is use my left-hand needle to go in through that stitch and then maneuver it so it jumps up and over that front one, and then just take my needle out. Can you see how it looks like that stitch is like strangling the throat of the one that's still left on my needle? Now that I have 1 stitch left on my right hand needle, I will go ahead and knit another stitch from my left hand needle and repeat the process. Have that back stitch jump up and over the front and off. You'll do this all the way to the end of the row. When you're left with 1 stitch, you simply cut your yarn, give it a pull, and then weave in your ends. It's that easy, you guys. Making this scarf is super simple, and as long as you maintain the garter stitch on the bottom and the garter stitch along the sides and then finish off with the garter stitch, your stockinette center will not roll. It's going to look really pretty. The finishing touch to this entire scarf is adding some fringe, and it's really easy to add fringe. Let me show you how to do that. When you want to add fringe, it's really as easy as cutting some lengths of yarn and then folding them over and applying them to your scarf. The designer, Sarah K. Hartman, wants you to have 10-inch lengths of yarn, and she wants you to have 5 of those lengths of yarn per piece of fringe. So what I'm doing here is I'm just guesstimating 10 inches, and I'm getting myself 5 strands. Now you can do this all individually, kind of like what I'm doing, or you could do it all at once and then, separate all of the strands out into 5 strand bundles. But this is easy for me for demonstration. So I have 5 strands here. All I'm going to do is I fold them in half, just like so. And it's at this halfway point that I want to apply it directly to my scarf. So I want to make sure that I have my fringe added as evenly as possible down here at the bottom. So you can go ahead and figure out how many fringe tassel-y kind of things you want to add to the bottom, and then space them out evenly along the bottom. I like to always place my first one in the center and then work out from there. On the right side of your work, so if this were my right side, because see my stockinette's right there, so this is the right side is facing me. I'm going to find the center portion. So here's my center. I'm going to take my hook and I'm going from the wrong side up towards the right side. Can you see that? And once I've done that, with my hook, I'm going to take where I folded over that fringe, and I'm just going to place it around my hook, and then using my hook, I'm going to pull it through the stitch that I went into. Okay, you have to maneuver it a little bit. Just pull it through the stitch you went into. Once you pull it through, it looks something like this. Go ahead, open up that center portion, put your fingers in, grab the tail portion of the fringe, pull it through the center bit, and when you pull this tight, you'll notice that that round bit there, that's the center of your fringe, is nice and flush and pretty right up next to the pretty side of your scarf. Now all you would do is create more fringe and evenly space them out directly from the center portion out to the edges. You'll repeat that on the opposite side of your scarf, weave in your ends, and you have a complete scarf. Now, because I don't have a completed scarf right here, let's take a look at the pattern so that we can see how this yarn works up and how it gives you that resemblance of Fair Isle. I'm going to go ahead and take all this out of the way and pull this in. And once again, you can see here in the scarf that the model is wearing, which is this one, it has some kind of blurred out Fair Isle look. And over here where it's laid out flat, it's almost easier to see where you get some really cool Fair Isle sort of look. Now again, this is not true Fair Isle where you hold 2 strands of yarn, one in each hand, and create an absolute wonderful Fair Isle. If you want to do that, we have videos on that you could totally check out, and you could achieve that with no problem. This is one of those, you know what, I want to just save some time, have a cool look, and do something a little bit new with a Super Saver Fair Isle. And it's in the Super Saver family, which you love. It's America's #1 most recommended yarn brand, and we've just improved it a little bit. So you can check out the Faux Fair Isle knit scarf. If you're a crocheter, check out the crochet version as well, and make sure that to pick up some of the Super Saver Fair Isle at a store close to you or directly from redheart.com. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you. Hey, don't leave yet. I'm sure there are other videos here that you will enjoy. Go ahead and check out some of my knitting and crochet videos, as well as some of my crafting videos. You will love them, I promise. If you hit subscribe, you'll be up to date whenever there's a new video released. And as my kids say, don't forget to smash that like button. Bye. Everything you need to know about knitting or crochet can be found right here on the Marley Bird YouTube channel. Learn with Marley Bird. Visit youtube.com/Marley Bird.